Hello, this is Mary Harris from Paper Crow. I'm up early this morning, so I thought I would record a little video, a little how-to. I am still a little bit tired, so if I sound half asleep, this is the first time I've talked today. I like to make these little bundles ahead of time and have them kind of stashed away for when I'm finishing a book and it just needs a little bit more pizzazz. I usually do a mass make of them, and I'm going to show you how I mass produce them. When I make these little bundles, I start off with a large piece of gift wrap. And I have these little books. I've mentioned them before. I found them at a thrift store. It's actually it's a book of gift paper. If you happen to find one of these, scoop them up, because it's an easy way to have a stash of paper without it being stacks and stacks in a box or something like that, which I also have. But so we're gonna pick some paper here that's in the color scheme I'm looking for. I'm kind of in Halloween mode, which I know none of these are really Halloween, but by the time you tear them down to small pieces, it's a whole different picture. You don't even see what the actual pattern is. There's so much over it. So I guess I'm gonna go with the green because I don't want anything too feminine and flowery. So the first thing we do is rip off an end of this, and you're looking for about 2 inches wide. And just rip along. It doesn't have to be, you don't want it to be perfect. You want it to be a little bit messy because we're going to just further rip it as we go. Now, I'll take one piece of this and spread it out. And I'm going to put my bundles all along this gift wrap. I don't even have to tear it until after I'm done, which is the beauty of it. So you can just store them flat, like fold it up and flat somewhere, and then tear them up when you need them, or you can tear them up and put them in a box, whatever is your pleasure. So I also need to make some patterned paper. I need to put a little bit of life into a piece of paper. So I grabbed just a vintage paper. This is dyed with avocado. I don't have time this morning to show that, but if you boil an avocado nut that you would throw away anyway, it actually makes beautiful pink water that you can stain your paper with. All right, so we need the paper, we need some stencils and some ink. Along with some stencils, which I have here, I also have this stamp. I like to put writing. I have quite a few of these different styles of writing, so you can add writing to the pattern. We're basically going to make this paper look busier, and we have to keep in mind that it's going to be torn to be about this big, which is maybe 1.5 inches, and rough torn. So it's got to be extremely busy. I have some ink here to choose from, and I think I'm going to grab a couple of colors. I like to have a really light writing on there that you can't see easily, and then one that's a little bit more obnoxious that stands out. So we'll go for, you need to use Distress Oxide. It's just what I happen to have here. This is Ground Espresso by Ranger. This one is Fossilized Amber, and Archival ink, which is really probably the best version to use here. This is Hickory Smoke. So you'll see the variation in how dark they are as we go along. I'm going to start off by putting some words down that are light. I tend to start light and go darker. Now what you can do to make it look even more fancy is you can mix the colors a little bit. It does kind of mess up your pads, but you can add some dark in with the yellow fossilized amber to kind of make the words fluctuate in color. Actually, I tend to like pad the ink on, and then I like to press where I want the words to show up. So I'll press only in the center part of the stamp so it has more of a faded edge, and you can see the color of the words changes because I put the two different inks on there at the same time. And I can usually get a couple of passes with one inking here. It'll keep going, and maybe we'll do one more. I use the rule of odds. So when I do art, if I just have an even number, it tends to bug me, but if it's an odd number, for some reason it looks more fulfilling, I guess. All right, now we have a stencil. I'm gonna put some stenciling and go a little bit darker. So this is the second darkest. It's the hickory smoke. And I can do the same thing. I can press it on there if I want. Or if you have something like this to pull the ink up, it's even more effective, but it just depends on how much energy you want to put into it. You want to make sure you're holding the stencil down tight before you start filling it in with ink, or else you'll lose the pattern. But we're just going to do some blotches all around. And same thing, I'm going to go for an odd number, even though it's funny because I'm going to just rip it up into pieces, but it just tends to feel better to me. I don't know. I didn't realize how much inking would shake the camera, but sorry if it looks like we're having an earthquake. It's just me rubbing ink on. All right, there's one. We have another stencil here. This one's like raindrops. And I'm gonna go even darker with the Ground Espresso. And Ground Espresso is so close to black, but when it's lighter, it looks like a charcoal brown. Like it just makes it a better fade when you're doing different shading of it, and it's really good for aging things, making them look vintage. It just has a really nice color to it. If you can hear those nails on the floor, that is my dog and cat playing in the background. I'm gonna add in some lettering. This is a stencil for lettering, just kind of sporadic lettering. It's good for filling in space, because no matter where you put it in, it's mixed up letters. Can't really see it too brightly, but I don't want it to just be a big smear of brown marks. We'll do some bigger letters here. Put some more over here. Try not to shake the camera with my, definitely need to find a different way to connect that. So it's really hard to get a camera to line up over this mat without it being attached to the table. All right, I'm gonna grab another little writing. This is a miniature writing one. I think this is from a Tim Holtz. You stick it to a block, and that gives you the ability to hold on and make your marks. You can also take it off, and then you can like roll it and just put the sections down that you want, which is what I prefer to do. And I have a different archival ink. This is a green. Let's see what it's called. If I can put tape. Fern green it's called. I love this color. It's so pretty. We're gonna do it similar to the other words. I can press it down this way because this is such a huge pad. And with this one, I can just pick where I want it and just press down on the parts of the words I want to show up. And same thing, I can get several presses out of one. I don't like to go all the way to the edge when I press down because then it shows a weird line, especially since you're holding it free like that. All right, I think that's a busy enough pattern. There's a few blank spots, but not too bad. So we have a variety of different, it looks like a mess right now, but when we start ripping it up, it'll be perfect. So I rip the edges off because I don't like a sharp line on. I mean, sometimes a sharp line is the right thing to do. If I'm making the pocket, like the foundation of a pocket, then I want it to be as straight as possible. But in this case, we want it to be like we're mimicking natural scraps of paper. If you happen to have a whole box of scraps that you've saved, you can skip this part and just start ripping up your scraps. So we've got the edges off, and now we can just start ripping. We're going a little bit more narrow than this sheet. So maybe a little over 1.5 inches. The other one was about 2.5 inches. It doesn't have to be perfect. We don't want it to be perfect. Now you can see that busy pattern, when you take out just that section, it doesn't look quite so busy anymore. And we're going to further rip them because we're not looking for them to be perfect. You can do this in mass quantity. You can just go through and try to rip some different shapes, or else you'll get bored because everything will look the same. You can do square-ish, you can do like a longer triangle. Sometimes you want long pieces if you're trying to break it up a little bit. All right, so we've got our little mix here. So now when we look at it, we have some variation because we put the different stamps on it. They're all gonna look a little bit different. And it really doesn't look that busy or chaotic once you break it down into the small pieces that you're going to use. The other thing you're going to need today is a stapler. You could sit and glue until you're blind. You could sit and glue these all on, but I prefer to staple them, and I glue on the top decoration on top of the staple. You're also going to want variations of different colors, old paper you've used in other projects. You can see this is that alphabet stamp that I was just using. It's just a much darker color. This is some old vintage paper. I'm going to do the same thing with this that I did with the other paper and just rip it into pieces, so I have some options for making layers. This one I'm gonna rip a stripe in case I feel the need to add a line in. I'm trying to rip it in a way that it doesn't show the white line, just because this is such clean paper that it won't really match up if that white edge is showing. Same thing here, I'm going to rip it so that the part I tear off has a white edge that I don't want. I know that's a small detail, but it saves me time in that I don't have to sit and ink all those edges to try to make them look old. You can actually dye this with coffee, even though it's already got a pattern on it, and that will darken all of this and make it look a little bit more natural when you put it together. And you can see I like pre-rip things. You can see that I do a lot of prepping ahead of time when it comes to making these mass makes. I try to get all the papers ripped down because then I can just look at them as I go. And you have lots of options. Can you hear my Canadian accent in there? I live in the States, but sometimes I say something that's so Canadian because we're right on the border. I know I have an accent, but I forget sometimes until I use a phrase that is really obviously Canadian. Okay, so we have our more colorful pile. We have the ones that we added some design to, and then I have pulled out ahead of time some images from my stash that I want to put onto a bundle. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put some paper bundles on here and I'm going to staple them on. I take whatever one I want to be on the bottom. In this case, I'm going for the whiter color, and I kind of spread them out. And you don't even have to really pay attention to what they look like when you put the first ones down. It's more about how you assemble them once you start adding on. So as I start to pile on the paper to make the bundle, then I'm going to pay more attention to how they look. I want to make sure both colors are seen and that they look well together as far as shape. And you might change your mind a few times, and that's okay. Give yourself permission to be finicky. I watch a few junk journal artists on YouTube, and it always amazes me how beautiful their hands look, because I'm not a nail chewer or anything like that, but I definitely do a lot that messes up my hands. Mostly art stuff. They're usually covered in glue or stained, and it's hard to do art with gloves on. It doesn't suit me, I guess. I want to feel it in my hands, but then you have the consequence of it looking like a hot mess. Maybe we'll do one more color. No, I don't like that. So we could add some of this in. You can see as I bundle them, they start to get a little bit more character. Remember when you're bundling them that you're also going to have this wrapping paper in the background. So in this case, you could slide them off there. Luckily, I have another sheet right here, because I'm just going to pick them up off of there and staple them on. So I have the bundle already set up. Find a spot on the wrapping paper and staple it where I'm okay with putting a bigger image. And you can just go down the line, staple all your bundles. Oh, I'm messing up my little bundles already. This would probably be easier with a big stapler, but I have so much art supplies that it just, I try to get miniature things if possible, smaller versions, but some things are not very useful as a smaller version. Like, I have like a seam, oh, what is it called? It's where you put the fold in, and I got a little one and I just can't use it. It's too tiny. It doesn't fit what I do. So now I have a small one and a large one, so I didn't end up saving space on it anyway. Now I'm looking for someone to take my little one. But I think a card maker might be able to use it better than I would, because it's really for that size. I'm going to add one more. All right. So now we have, I'm going to set this other stuff aside. Now you could keep doing this, get lots of strips done, which is usually what I do if I'm making for a project, or if I'm sitting down at the end of the day and just having a snack and watching a show or something like that. I'll get as many of these done as I can, and then I go back and I'll pull out my images and find images that fit what I've put together. So remember, you're going to have this paper with it as you start to set them down and look for good spots for the images. You're going to have the paper attached to it, behind it, and you have to cover the staple unless you sat and glued them all together, which I am just too lazy for that. See, I like her. See, she's got some different colors behind her. She pops out. Maybe a butterfly there. Let's see, we'll do some flower ones. You can kind of move them around and see what fits best with it. And you're not trying to line it up. You want it to be an image behind. It sort of highlights the image that you're gluing on. You want it to kind of frame it in a way. You'd either have it frame one side or do it centrally, something that will make it pop. In this case, I want a darker thing with her to make her pop out more. I have a lot of little butterflies and flowers. A lot of the sets of images you get have those. Yeah, I like him. I'm going to change this one. Now it's okay if they overlap, because we're just going to glue them down where the staple is. So when we tear them, we just have to be mindful of how we tear them. Let's see. Here's another butterfly. That's not too bad. No. I also have these little images. Maybe I'll use one of these. These are old vintage cards. They're miniature cards, and those can be cute as bundles too. That one could work. I think I'll do that. All right, now Fabri-Tac or glitter glue will work for gluing these down, because if there's no fabric, glitter glue is a great option. It dries very fast, so you want to make sure you give yourself time to get it down. You don't want to put glue on multiple. Fabri-Tac gives a little bit more time. It's a little more forgiving. You can move it around a little bit. See how I'm just putting glue on the space where I could put it right on here if I wanted, if I want to make sure I don't get glue in the wrong spot. Can run it right along that staple. This image actually came out of a sticker book that I found at one of the bigger bookstores. It's just all vintage stickers. I don't have it with me, but I'll try to put it in the comment section. All right, so give that a minute to set. Now if you're making these and you don't want to rip them up, you could leave them like that, or you can rip them up before you store them in case you're just looking to like make sure you have the frame of the paper. I like to have that rough edge, so I'm going to rip off anything that looks too squared off. See how we're going to rip the gift paper, but we're not ripping the image itself. You just got to be mindful, but it's not glued to the paper, so it's not a big deal. You can just part it and rip it, and then go back and like make more sense of it. Like I'll take some off of here because I don't need it to be pointy at the top. I'm gonna get rid of these super straight edges because yuck. I don't know why I hate it so much, but I don't like to have a huge sheet of that gift wrap. It's just giving it some color. In this case, this gift wrap has parrots on it, so I really don't want the parrots to show. I just want to use the color to emphasize the image. So I rip it pretty close. And it doesn't have to be the same shape either. So like that is the same shape, but I want to have it not totally line up. So I'm going to go a little bit off there. So when all is said and done and we put it into a book, we have this little bundle. I have this little, not little, big book that I put one of each thing that I make, and it's more for inspiration later on if I, want to look for an idea, or if I just want something to look at that might inspire a new idea, something new I haven't tried. But it gives me the ability to put something in and see how it will look later on. So if I want to sort of test how well this turned out, I could try to put it into the book and see how it looks on a page or on a pocket. See if we have an empty pocket in here somewhere. So this could go on the top flap. If we're looking at some of the other ones, you can see how it would jazz that up a little bit, make it look a little fancier. So there you go. That's how you make bundles in a mass make.